Director of the Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center at the Consulate General of India in Durban, Dr. Chaitanya Prakash Yogi, Brahmachari Abhijit Chaitanya ji, Ms.Kashmir B.Pattundeen ji, Mr. Rajesh Lachman, Mr. CPUM Chunu, Mr. Piyush Khandalwal, distinguished guests, online listeners and viewers, namaskar and welcome to the 12th episode of Aarshdhara. Aarshdhara is a series of interactions with scholars on the scriptures composed by ancient sages of India. Indeed, today we will be decoding and depicting the Aitareya Upanishad with Brahmachari Abhijit Chaitanya ji, who will be interacting with Ms.Kashmir B.Pattundeen ji. And just a brief, to commence today's program, allow me to introduce Mr. Rajesh Lachman, the CEO of Hindwani radio station. This program is in association with the Hindi Siksha Sangh of South Africa. So namaste and welcome Rajesh ji for today's introductory remarks on the 12th episode of Aarshdhara.
धन्यवाद श्री जी, डॉक्टर योगी जी, कश्मीर जी, संपीवे जी, पीयूष जी और श्री जी, आप सबको इस कार्यक्रम पर हमारा स्वागत है. We indeed delighted to once again be part of this amazing program with the in partnership with the Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center to unpack some of the wisdom that are in our wonderful literature is really a rare privilege and opportunity. And I'm always thankful to all the participants for the research, for the work that goes into putting together these presentations. Abhijit, तो आपको भी स्वागत है. We are indeed always grateful to have a homegrown child, more or less, with us here. So Abhijit ji, the Hindi Siksha Sangh is no stranger to you, so we are deeply privileged and honored to have you on this call as well. On behalf of the Hindi Siksha Sangh and Hindwani, we are deeply grateful to all of you for this amazing effort. Once again, welcome, and we really hope that the information that you share today touches somewhere somebody whose soul, and that makes a difference in their lives. God bless you. Namaste.
Thank you so much, Rajesh ji, for those introductory remarks. Sit back and relax as we take you through an incredible journey through these awesome ancient scriptures, where today we will be unpacking and decoding the Atharia Upanishad by Brahmachari Abhijit Chaitanya ji, who will be interacting with Ms.Kashmir B.Pattundeen ji. Just a brief background about Abhijit ji. Abhijit ji was introduced to the Chinmay mission during Ramayana talks delivered by revered Swami Vivekananda ji. Abhijit ji then studied a full-time Vedanta course conducted by Swami ji. He took blessings of Pujay Swami Tejomayananda ji in India, and after completing his studies, he was conferred Brahmachari Diksha, where he now serves the mission. Abhijit ji will be interacting with the very beautiful Ms. Kashmir B.Pattundeen ji. Kashmir ji is the director of KBP Attorneys Inc., based in Durban. She's a conveyor and admitted attorney of the High Court. She is passionate about furthering the role women play in law in South Africa, being an active mentor to young women, hosting work experience sessions with aspirant lawyers and skills sharing initiatives, and bringing access to justice and legal information at a community level. Kashmir ji is also a Kathak dancer, having graduated with distinction and completing her Rangmanch Pravesh from the Natyeshwar Dance Academy in 2008. Kashmir ji went to continue her passion for performing arts by exploring her creative interest in her free time, both in India and locally. Sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of Aarshdhara. Welcome, Abhijit ji and Kashmir ji, for your awesome interaction today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a very great privilege for me to be here. And it's such a great opportunity that you have given us to think about our scriptures and our philosophy. So thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much, Shristiji, for that very wonderful and generous introduction. And my prem namaste to you, Brahmachari, Abhijit, Chaitanya ji. We're very excited to get into today's discussion, so I think let's get into it. So I think initially, if you can please just give us a simple and brief introduction to the Aitareya Banishad for our viewers and for our listeners.
Firstly, my Hariom and Namaskar to you, Kashmir ji. I think it's the first time I'm meeting you.
Yes,
I'm very happy to meet you and glad that I'm able to have some interaction with you as well.
Thank you, likewise.
So, regarding the Aitareya Upanishad, see, Aitareya Upanishad is considered as one of the major Upanishads or the main Upanishads which students generally study. And the reason why it's part of the main Upanishads is because Bhagwan Shankaracharya, who is known as Adi Shankaracharya, so he had written a commentary in Sanskrit on the mantras of the Aitareya Upanishad. And that is very highly regarded. Therefore, Aitareya is one of the 10 major Upanishads on which Adi Shankaracharya ji had written commentary to explain the mantras. Some more information about Aitareya Upanishad. As you know, it comes from the Rig Veda. Aitareya Upanishad has its source in the Vedas. It comes from the Rig Veda. In the Rig Veda, there's a section which is called Aitareya Brahman. It's a section of that book. And in there are 40 chapters in that particular section of the Vedas. And from chapter 4 to chapter 6 is considered as the Aitareya Upanishad. Then there are about 3 chapters, 4 to 6. There are 33 mantras in total of this Upanishad. And the central message of this Upanishad is found in the 6th chapter, where it says Prajnanam Brahma. In other words, it means you are the infinite consciousness or infinite Atma. So the Upanishad itself, the first chapter, if you want me to go through the chapter to chapter, or how would you prefer to proceed?
I think we will get to, I think further into the program, we can go through chapter by chapter.
Just to give an overview, the first chapter of the Aitareya Upanishad is mainly talking about how the Atma or consciousness was existing before the creation. The central theme of the first chapter is about showing how Atma, or what in English you say consciousness, was present along without name and form before the creation had emerged. And thereafter, details are given about how creation started, how the individual had also come into existence, and that procedure of the world and the individuals coming into existence is given in the first chapter. In the second chapter of the Aitareya Upanishad, it is mainly talked about how the consciousness is unmodifying and infinite. And it explains this theme through telling us how the Jivatma, how the individual is born. You know how we talk about childbirth. So what is the real meaning of birth? And how many births does an individual actually take? So that is talked about in the second chapter. And in the last chapter of the Aitareya Upanishad, the question and answer is asked. The question is asked, who am I? How is it that I'm able, because of what can I see? Because of what am I able to speak? Am I able to smell? Am I able to hear? What is that because of which I am able to perceive the creation? So essentially, who am I was the question. And the answer is given in 4 very short mantras, very beautiful mantras about who am I is told. And in that last chapter, the Mahavakya, the most important statement comes, Prajnanam Brahma. So the Atma is discussed exclusively in the 3rd chapter. So in a nutshell, this is what the Aitareya Upanishad, the topics that it generally covers. But as you know, it's much more expansive than what I have said. But a very brief overview about the contents of the 3 chapters.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think that's incredibly enlightening. And it's a lovely place for us to start and get into. It sounds like such a beautiful scripture. And I do appreciate that we can never get the full value of the scripture in one program, but we're certainly going to try. So I think following from that, if I may ask you, how and why is it considered one of the most important scriptures? And from that, did you find any research or academic studies about the scripture that you can share with us today?
See, when we talk about the authority of any text, or anything for that matter, a thing is having a very high authority depending on whom it's coming from. So if somebody gives you some news and you feel that individual is not reliable, so what news he gives, you not believe it. But if it comes from a very reliable person who you have confirmed, then you will take it as a reality. So with the Upanishads also, another name for the Upanishad or the Vedas is called Shruti. Shruti means that which has been heard. So the Upanishads and the Vedas are a source of knowledge which has been heard. It has not been written by any individual. Bhagwan Vedavyas is responsible for collecting the Vedas, the Vedic mantras, which include all the Upanishads, which include Aitareya Upanishad, and arranging them. But there is no author. There's no individual who is the author of the Vedas or the Upanishad. It is Shruti. That means it has been heard. And heard means what? Heard means that every individual's mind is having thoughts. I have thoughts in my mind. You also will have thoughts in your mind. All individuals in the world have mind, and mind has thoughts. But the nature and the quality of thoughts of an individual depend on his state of mind. Therefore, we don't have all thoughts. I don't think on all topics. Neither will you think on all topics. It depends on what is the soil of my mind that will determine what will germinate in that mind. So those great, what we call as Rishi, in English they will say sage or saint. Now the great Rishis, when they had renounced and had gone out to live for the purpose of attaining God, for the purpose of forsaking all egoistic pursuits. So doing that is a very austere life. It's not easy. So in that state of selflessness, in that state of complete surrender and sacrifice, when the mind becomes that elevated, then in that pure mind, these mantras flash. The best way I can explain it, when anybody has intuition, we call it.
Yes.
On any topic, if you think a lot, if you really put your mind on any topic and if you think a lot for a decent amount of time, you'll find that there's certain thoughts come towards you, which you never had before. It's what you call inspiration. Inspiration means what? It means that within my mind, I was able to connect with the infinite for a period of time. And in that period of time, there were certain beautiful thoughts that came, which I never had before, which came from the macrocosm or from the God. And with this Upanishad and with the Vedas, the knowledge came in that manner. It has not been written by anybody. Therefore, it is considered as knowledge which is devoid of fault. See, any time when somebody makes any literature, and there's great literature in this world, and there's great scholars and saints who have written literature.
Yes.
But when an individual writes something, there will always be some kind of fault in it, intentionally or even unintentionally. When we breathe in air itself, sometimes or when you walk, you tramp insects, which you don't even know sometimes. You may never even know. So, like that, these Mahatmas, when their minds had become very pure, then they had heard the various mantras and documented them and taught them. The way in which the knowledge was transferred was not through the book. In the ancient times, because the mindset of the people were very pure.
Yes.
Pure mindset means pure intentions in life. Pure mindset means that a very dharmic, righteous living. This will bring about a pure mind. Therefore, books were not required at that period of time. Knowledge was transferred based on speech. And because the student's mind was pure, he was able to retain a lot of knowledge. But as time, sakale neha mata, yogo nashtah parantapa. In chapter 4, Bhagavad Gita, Bhagwan Krishna says that during the course of time, as Kali Yuga had become more, then the purity of the individual had become less and less. Therefore, the ability to retain the knowledge was less. That's when we had moved to documenting it on books. And therefore, this is a very authoritative text because it has come from the infinite in a very pure mind. And that pure mind had documented it. And it is now available for us because of the long lineage of the Rishi, the Guru and Shishya Parampara, that tradition of disciple and student, disciple and teacher. Because of that tradition, this knowledge has been preserved. and it is available now in book form so that we can study it and understand more and rid ourselves of sorrow. Therefore, it is extremely authoritative because it has come from the most authoritative source, which is the Lord himself.
I love that you said that this knowledge is void of fault. It just makes it so beautiful and so pure. And I only hope that we are aware enough to receive this knowledge. I think in our next question, and you've obviously touched on this a little bit as well, could you please share with us any special, unique, interesting and enlightening elements in this scripture that stand out for you? That is something that we can take with us. I'm sure it's the whole scripture. The whole scripture is incredibly beautiful, but perhaps just a few elements.
Very beautiful question, and the question has many parts to it. Interesting, unique, special. These are all very beautiful way to look at the Upanishad actually, in this manner. We should know that it is special, it is unique, it is interesting. It's very important to understand that. So if you ask about the uniqueness about this Upanishad, see, in this Upanishad, as in all Upanishads, the message is only one. The Upanishads only talk about who am I and what my true nature is. All Upanishads. But each Upanishad has a different methodology of doing it. They do not contradict each other. But the way of arriving at the truth is different for each Upanishad. In this Upanishad, what is very beautiful is that in the second chapter, it talks about the birth of a human being and how many births we actually go through. We only know of one birth. But the Upanishad talks about 3 different times the individual takes birth before his gross birth, which is through the mother. Mm-hmm. So that is actually considered as the last birth of the Jeev. So this is a very unique thing about the Upanishad. Another unique aspect is that the Upanishad talks about the creation and how the creation came about in a very beautiful, unique way. Other Upanishads also talk about it, but this Upanishad also has an interesting way to talk about how the creation came about and how the individual came into existence also, which is the fundamental question of any thinking individual. Who am I? Where have I come from? So this is what makes it very unique and very interesting. Interesting if you want to know. See, anything is interesting when that particular thing has impact on my life. Relevant, yes. Interesting, these words. I saw in the questionnaire, how relevant is the Upanishad? So these words are very close together. Yes. Interest, anything is interesting. Is very subjective. Whether something appears interesting to me, it depends on what kind of mindset I have, what my qualification is.
Yeah, I am to receive it. Yes, absolutely.
Yes. Therefore, not every topic appears interesting. For example, there's medical science, there's engineering, all beautiful topics. But to the individual, it may not appear interesting because maybe he's not that qualified, or maybe the interest is not there. So whether a scripture is beautiful, it is interesting, but whether I'm able to find interest in it, it depends on how ready I am to understand that and to see the beauty of it. Sometimes in life, it takes time to appreciate something. When I first picked up the Upanishad, I thought I'm reading a book. Okay, it was important. But as I've studied over the years, as I've spent time with my own guru, my Pujya Swami Abhijit, the more I spend time with him, the more I've seen him, the more you go through experiences in life, the more you start to appreciate these texts and these scriptures in a bigger way. So it's a very beautiful love story, you can say, between the individual and the scripture. It's very interesting to see the journey of where you start, how you feel about the scripture in the beginning, before, during your journey, at a later stages. Therefore, if somebody loves the scriptures, if he's able to find love in the scripture, there's nothing more that can charm him in life than the feet of the guru and the scripture which the guru teaches.
Thank you. And I think that resonates so much. So it depends on what journey we are on or where we are at in our journey. That's what we would receive from the scripture itself. Abhijit, if we were to sort of discuss the Upanishad and making it relevant and important in our present or our modern day context, how would we, what would be your comments on that? How would that be relevant to us in our modern day? Or do we have to be of a certain intellect or a certain phase of our journey in life to receive the knowledge from this?
See, there's two aspects we have to consider while thinking on the topic of relevance. Many things in life are relevant, and I also feel that it's relevant. Okay, like for example, electricity is a relevant factor in our life.
Yes.
With the load shedding and all of that, you see how difficult it becomes sometimes. Therefore,
Yes.
we say electricity is irrelevant. When you don't have for 2 or 3 hours, then you understand
trouble,
how important it is. Many things are relevant in life, and we know about it. We know that it's relevant. But many things are relevant, and we don't know about it. And that is because of our own ignorance. It's not a bad thing. Oh, I'm an ignorant person. We all are ignorant on so many areas. So being ignorant is not an insult to anything. But because of our ignorance, therefore, other things are relevant, we don't know about it. So why is it relevant? Why is the Upanishad relevant? It's relevant because the subject matter is I. Subject matter is me. It is the individual. See, relevance is determined on how something impacts my life. If something doesn't affect my life in any manner, physically, emotionally, intellectually, then that particular thing is not considered as important. I'll give a very gross example. If somebody down the road is having good news, so you may be happy about it, but it won't really create that much change in you. But for the individual, it's a very big moment. But if I have the very good results in school or college or at work, then my feeling is very different. It could be the same news that happened in both houses, but the relevancy for both is different. When it comes to the Upanishad, because the subject matter of the Upanishad is I, me, therefore it is always, there is no question of relevance. Because the most relevant thing in the creation is me. Without I, nothing exists. Because I'm existing, therefore I pray to Bhagwan, to God. Therefore I talk to, without my existence, there's no relationship, there's no world, there's no God to pray to for me. And therefore I am most relevant and I should be sought after. Therefore I should know who I am. Sorrow, an individual goes through challenges in this life or in this world. Why? And the reason for that is I don't know exactly who I am. I know a little bit that I am an individual. I am existing, that much I know. But my notions about myself are not correct. Therefore, I go up and down in life with the experiences that come during the lifetime. Good experiences, bad experiences. An individual fluctuates. His joy and sorrow. And then you will say at the end, you don't know what I have gone through in this life. What these eyes have seen.
Yes, we've had that very often. Yes.
Why? Why we have said that? Because we have gone through ups and downs. There's a constant flow of ups and downs. The life, we are not born to go up and down. We are born to realize that this whole world is a superimposition on I. And we are not meant to be thrown up by situations. And the knowledge of the Upanishad teaches how I am beyond all situations. How my I is unaffected by anything that the outer situation can give. Therefore, it is extremely relevant. Otherwise, life becomes challenging when I don't know who I am. And I try to fix the symptoms and I don't go directly to the problem. Who is me? So it brings about inner change. It brings about a beautiful personality once the study of the Upanishads are done. And Upanishads are meant for every human being. It is not meant for a particular religion. This knowledge about I is not meant for a specific race or a specific religion. It is a universal knowledge. Yes, it is presented in the Vedas in a Sanskrit form, but it is still relevant for all religions and all races.
Thank you. That's so eloquently put. It's applicable to all of us throughout our journeys in life. So my next question is my favorite one. So would you like to quote or mention some verses from the Aitareya Banishad for us, please? Perhaps one or two that carry an important message. Whilst I know the entire scripture is important, we'd love to hear a few verses from you, if that's okay.
Sure. The mantras are very cryptic. Okay, the mantras are very cryptic. Upanishads, before I tell you the mantra, it's a very cryptic. Cryptic means not that somebody has put it in a particular way so it's difficult to decipher. No. It's cryptic because, as I said earlier, the mind is not ready to understand something.
Yes.
Therefore, you will find a lot of interpretations on the Upanishad. One of the questions were about the references. There are many interpretations which are beautiful. There are many which are also incorrect. And that's because our mind is not able to understand the cryptic nature of the Upanishads. The Upanishads are addressing a student who is at a very high state of evolution. Therefore, with very few words, the individual is able to understand what the meaning is very quickly. In any field of study, the more qualified a student is, whether it is in engineering, whether it is in gardening, whether it is in cleaning, the more qualified a person is for that area, the more he'll be able to understand the knowledge of that area with lesser instruction. So the Upanishad also speaks to that student who is very highly qualified. Therefore, we have books like the Puranas, Ramcharitmanas, Bhagavad Gita, which talks about the Upanishad, but in a way that's more accessible to the student who is not so qualified. Yes. After all, we all are on the path at different places on the path. So it's not a matter of being feeling bad that I am here or I am there. But point is, we are on the path. So we have to cross at that point at some point in time.
Absolutely.
So one of the most beautiful verses, as we had asked, is the Shanti mantra of the Aitareya Upanishad. There it says, Om Vang Me Manasi Pratishtita. So what the Shanti mantra is a prayer by the one who is studying and by the teacher. Om Vang Me Manasi Pratishtita. May my speech, the words that I speak, may they be established manasi. That's Saptami Vibhakti, 7th case, in my mind. So the meaning of this is, may my speech be established in my mind. Means what? It means that before we speak, the speech of an individual should not be thrown around very easily. Talking is a very good thing. But when it is done at the wrong time, at the wrong place, in the wrong way, that speech is not a good speech. And the power of speech is that it creates not only either joy or disturbance in the people around you, but it's like throwing a pebble into the pond of my own mind. What I say comes back to affect my own mind. Therefore, Vang Me Manasi Pratishtita. Let my speech be established in my mind. That means my words should be very well thought. My ideas, my concepts in life should be very well thought of. Otherwise, why waste time talking? Unless I am convinced about what I am speaking. Therefore, one saint is one. Why we feel that the words of the saint is very important. It's because what he speaks is out of thinking for a very long time. Thinking coupled with surrendering to God and worshipping God. Now, therefore, the words that come out of his mouth are churned. Like when you churn the milk, you get butter, you get ghee, you get curd from the same milk. The speech also should be churned in the mind. Then only that speech will have a value. It has a weight. It has the ability to illuminate, to give joy, and to make me go further. Vang me manasi pratishtita, mano me vachi pratishtitam. The next one says, mano me vachi pratishtitam. Whatever good emotions I have in my mind and whatever good convictions, intellectual and emotional, convictions are at the intellectual level and emotions are at the mental level. Let my good convictions and good emotion, vachi pratishtitam, expressed through my speech. Mano me vachi pratishtitam. Avir avir. The next word is avir avir. The seeker is asking God, please come. Please come in front of me. Bless me. I want to see you. In life, if you need anything, people around can only help as far as they can. The God alone is the ultimate giver. Avi Ravi, that when the student is studying the Upanishad, it's not an easy thing. It's challenging because you have bodily sometimes problems, mental problems, intellectual problems. So when you're asking God to be in front of you, it means protect me and allow me to study and receive the fruit of study. Like this, it's a very long mantra. If I go through all the verses, it takes some time. But Shrutam me maha prahasi. Whatever I heard, may I not lose it. One last point I'll say on this mantra. See, even when we get knowledge, knowledge, no matter how valuable that knowledge is, if the knowledge that I gain is not kept in my mind, it has no value. Person makes mistake. Why? Mistake, Swamiji says, because he must to take something. We make mistakes because we
must to take.
So may what we study in the Upanishads, the knowledge, may it not go out of my mind. And only a mind which is having very less desires for the world can hold knowledge. Desirous mind is thinking about the world continuously. What can I get? What can I do? Where can I go? What will I eat next? Where will I? And so on. What can I see next? That kind of mind, I'm not saying it's a bad mind. I'm just saying it is not fit to hold the knowledge. Shrutam me ma prahasi anena. So like that, this verse is saying is very beautiful. Many points in here are very beautiful. But I don't think we have that much of time for me to go through the entire verse. So I just took a few points, but this is a very beautiful verse, the Shanti mantra of the Aitareya Upanishad.
I completely agree. And, you know, stemming from what you mentioned about us being in a position to receive it, a student of life such as myself, you know, you read a textbook in first year university and you have no idea what it means. You then read the same textbook in fourth year university and you completely understand it. So I think, you know, it goes back to what you said about we read these scriptures at different stages of our lives and we get to appreciate more and more about it. So thank you for that. I'm going to ask you the next question, but I do feel that you've unpacked it quite a bit for us. But so let me ask it anyway. So I think, you know, you've already mentioned that the scripture is universally applicable to all human beings and to the whole creation at large. But can you unpack that just a little bit more for us?
Sorry, I didn't get you the scriptures.
Oh. So let me repeat the question. So can you highlight for us how the Aitareya Banishad as a scripture is universally applicable to all human beings and to the whole creation at large? I know you've answered a bit of that already, but if you can unpack it a little bit more for us.
Sure. See, the Aitareya Upanishad is applicable to the entire creation and to all human beings, as I said initially, because it talks about I. Secondly, Upanishad talks about what? It talks about truth, Satyam. Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam, Brahma. Those scriptures talk about truth. The whole creation, sentient and insentient, both are based on Satyam, truth. Without truth, the creation cannot exist. Therefore, the Upanishad, what it talks about is what binds the entire creation together, which is Satyam, truth. Mm-hmm. And why it is relevant more, if you want more reasons than that. See, Upanishad, a very beautiful aspect about the Upanishad, it teaches us how to break down barriers. As the individual grows up, he grows up, and no, it's not a fault of anybody. Let's not blame anybody, or it is our own fate that we grow up in a particular way. But as we grow, we create certain notions which form barriers in life. And those notions many times are wrong and based on likes and dislikes and emotions, which are not very good emotions. Therefore, the Upanishad is that which gives knowledge to say that the Atma, the consciousness in me, is the same consciousness in you, is the same consciousness in the plant and the animal also. We say the same Atma, the same consciousness is pervading the entire creation. It is one Atma, not many. Therefore, Vasudeva Kutumbakam, this word is used. Meaning of it is the whole world is my family. Why? What makes family? There should be some common thread which makes somebody your family. You cannot just say somebody is my family. But because the Atma is the same Atma, which is in me, that is pervading the whole creation. Therefore, the whole creation is nothing but my extension. It is the extension of the infinite self. So from that point of view, the Upanishad encompasses the entire creation. And lastly, I will say that because the Upanishad teaches us who I truly am, therefore it removes sorrow. Once we realize I am not a finite individual, then you cannot insult me. Neither you can praise me. You cannot insult and praise that which has no name and no form, that which is not having any limitation, cannot be insulted, neither it can be praised. It just is. This is what the Upanishad talks about. And this is why it is relevant not only for certain people, but for the entire beings or everybody in this creation, sentient and insentient.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. I'm on to our last question now, and this is especially for all our viewers and for our listeners. How does one get inspired or motivated to keep going through and keep studying the Aitareya Upanishad? Perhaps if we start and we feel like we're not ready and we find the information a little bit overwhelming, do we stop and wait until we're a bit more mature, or at what stage would we know we're ready to receive the information? Can you perhaps go into a bit of detail for us around that?
Sure. See, there's a few points we have to keep in mind. Firstly, we don't go after anything in this world. It comes to us. Whatever has to come to me, it will come to me, regardless whether I want it or I don't want it to come. Situation does not ask, hello, are you ready? Swamiji says to us, our Swamiji, he says that situation doesn't knock on the door and say, I'm coming just now at 9 o'clock. Are you ready? I'm coming.
Oh, yes, it's so true. That is so true, yeah.
So Swamiji always says that. Therefore, in life also, studying the Upanishads, having that blessing, it comes. God gives that situation when an individual desires it. Number one. Number two, we have to make ourselves desiring the Upanishad does not happen naturally also. Although it is the desire of every individual, but it is covered by our desire for the world. It is covered by our desire to enjoy, to be licentious. So anybody who wants to have an interest in the Upanishads, in the scriptures, a sincere interest, not just as a notch on my belt kind of thing.
Yes,
no, who is a real spiritual aspirant, then he must do his dharma. We must perform our dharma, whatever our duties are in life, perform that while having the desire to make God happy. Never do action in life to please any person. Swamiji always says. You cannot please anybody for a long time. When you please somebody, then they want more from you next time. So you cannot please anybody. And then you cannot give, then fight starts. Therefore, never try to please anybody in this world. I love everybody, serve everybody, but always offer it to the God who is seated in the heart. That God is also established in temples and so on. Offer it to that God whom you love. Then you see that over a period of time, when I do dedicated action, my mind starts to inquire in these areas in a serious way. Inquiry is something, but serious inquiry is something else. When the mind has a serious inquiry, what does it mean? It means that the question doesn't leave my mind so easily.
Yes.
It's not just like, oh, I'm feeling hungry. Oh, this TV program is on. This is not a serious question. It's a casual question. The serious question of the Upanishads come when the question cannot leave my mind. Who am I? What is this creation? What is my purpose? When this question pricks, Vivekananda's Puja Swami Vivekananda, he gave the example that the desire to know the truth should be so much like when you put burning charcoal on the head of an individual, how he fights to free himself. He just wants to free himself. The question should be such that it creates anxiety that God says, I have to teach him. I have to send somebody to teach him. And last point I will say, if somebody wants to study the Upanishads, one is righteous living and offering to God. The next point is that, study of the Upanishads is not, I won't say it's not easy. Upanishads are cryptic. Yes. Therefore, it is very necessary to go to a teacher to study the Upanishads. It is not a book that we can casually browse through. Because our mind interprets things as per our own tendencies. Okay, as per our own base of knowledge. Therefore, people sometimes interpret the scriptures wrongly because I wanted to read it, I read it. What's the big deal? I can read it. You can read anything, no doubt. But what impact it has on the mind depends on who is teaching and how qualified I am. So the most important piece of advice, if I have to give advice, if anybody wants to study the Upanishads, go to a guru, a proper teacher, and ask guidance and follow that path. To become a doctor, nobody reads a book and becomes a doctor.
Yes.
He has to go through a process. Engineer, nobody just read a few books and became an engineer. But the scriptures, I read 1 or 2 books, I become authority, or I read a few quotations. It doesn't work like that. It's if you see this Upanishad, it is full of Sanskrit. It is not a simple language. It is very divine, beautiful scripture, which is meant for all of us. But we have to go to the right place to understand it in this correct way. Otherwise, we wrongly understand and wrongly interpret, and we use the scripture to further my ego. I know the scriptures now. Oh, it's not the purpose of the scripture. Scripture is not meant to increase my ego. Scripture is meant to destroy the ego.
Yes.
Scripture is meant to make me surrender. That is what the scripture is for. But if we go alone, many things will not be understood. Therefore, if you want to study, go to the right teacher. Go pray to God for the teacher, and He will give you a teacher to study the Upanishads.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think that's such an important pure message for us to end off with. And I'm so grateful that you've unpacked the scripture briefly, but you've also made it very accessible, tangible, and easy to understand. And I think we're all very excited about our spiritual journeys, and you've given us just a little taste of the honey or the nectar, and it was incredibly beautiful. So I'm truly grateful. Shrishti, over to you.
Indeed, thank you so much, Brahmachari, Abhijit, Chaitanya ji, and Kashmir ji, for that very powerful, power-packed decodation of the Aitareya Upanishad. I indeed learned so much. Thank you so much, Abhijit ji, for sharing that divine knowledge, that nectar with us. Thank you, Kashmir ji, as well, for taking time out of your busy schedule and joining us. With that, we've come to the close of episode 12 of Aarshdhara, and I'd like to invite Mr. Sipiwe Mchunu from the Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center at the Consulate General of India in Durban to render this evening's vote of thanks.
Namaskar and greetings to all of you. On behalf of Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center at the Consulate General of India in Durban, I am honored today to deliver a vote of thanks on the 12th episode of the program Aarshdhara. This is an online series of interaction on scriptures composed by ancient sages of India. Today's interactions were on Aitareya Upanishad. So to Brahmachari, Abhijit, Chaitanya ji, Dhanyavad, thank you very much. You know, you made our lives easier today, you know, because we really, I was following you, and, you know, now I know that Aitareya Upanishads, they talk more about who I am as a person and also where I am coming from as a person, you know, because, you know, we just worry about, yes, I'm here, end product, I'm birth, by birth, I'm here, that's it, finish, so what, live life. So few of us who always go back and think about who I am really. And in this journey of life, where I am going, you know, where I'm coming from. So to Abhijit ji, Dhanyavad said, thank you very much. So now allow me to thank our online guest. I will start with Mr. Rajesh Lashmanji, as COO of Hindi Vani Radio. And secondly, allow me to thank Ms. Kashmiri, B.Pattundeen, who is an attorney and a conveyor. And also to Ms. Kashmiri ji for conducting such a wonderful interactions on this Aitareya Upanishad. So Kashmiri ji, we also enjoyed the way you conducted and the questions that you asked Abhijit did. So ma'am, thank you very much to all of you. So I'm saying to Brahmachari, Abhijit, Chaitanya ji, Dhanyavad, Kashmiri, B.Pattundeen ji, ma'am, Dhanyavad, ma'am. To Director of the Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center at the Consulate General of India in Durban, Dr. Chaitanya Prakashoki, Srishti Harinarayan, Sri Piyush Kandelwal, Dhanyavad for taking part on today's program. To our online participants, we'd like to say thank you for being with us this evening. For more information on cultural activities organized by Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center, please visit ICCR in Durban. Once again, to Sri Rajesh Lashmanji, Abhijit ji, and Kashmiri ji, Dhanyavad to all of you. Have a wonderful evening. Namaskar.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Ariyo. Namaskar.